Thank you so much for joining us on today's episode of Jimmy's Decorative Moment. We're on episode 6. Can you believe it? Today we have a really great show ahead of us with some really fabulous people in the industry. But first, I'd like to thank our supporters and sponsors. Thank you to Glenn and Janice Williams of the Rosendale Arts Alliance. This show would not be possible without you. Thank you so much to Simone Williamson of Be Our Guest Party Rental. You're a wonderful, wonderful person, and I thank you so much for all of the furniture and all of the rentals that we'll be working with throughout the show. Without much further ado, I'd like to go ahead and introduce our guest today. We have Molly Jackson from FMA Events. We have Chance from Restaurant Associates, and we have Maggie from the Breyer Group. Thank you guys so much for coming. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Yeah.
So, do you like all the pink little roses?
Yeah.
So I always like to start the show off by asking a question. I ask it to all of our guests. I just like to gauge people's perception of the phrase. When you hear the phrase decorative moments, what does that mean to you?
It makes me think of the kind of moments in an event that are remembered and that come to mind when you think back on that event. So whether it's actual decor or kind of just a moment and experience in the event, that's
nice.
kind of what it brings me back
So
to.
it's retrospective.
Yeah.
It's kind of like you've had the event, you've enjoyed the event, like days later, weeks later, months later, a year later, you look back at that event, and it's that memory that is the decorative moment.
Yeah.
I love that. That's a really unique answer. I love it. How about you, Chance?
For me, it's actually almost the exact opposite. I think of it as the things that you don't remember because they happen the way that they were supposed to. So it can be something as minimal as, from a service perspective, not noticing your server because they're doing so well to
I love
seamlessly
that.
blend
I can't
into
wait
the
to get into this
background.
episode and just talking to you because you're like the quintessential like service professional. Like you
thank
direct all of the service at restaurant. I don't even really know all of what you do, so I can't wait to like.
Sometimes I don't either. So
I can't wait to probe that. How about you, Maggie?
So for me, it's that instant when you walk into a room or to the MFA during Art in Bloom and you see an installation or an escort card table or just even the way the room is set up and you think, that's amazing. Who did that? That's such talent. And really, it's on the inside, it's just an admiration of that talent, the creative design. For me, that's a decorative moment.
I love that. It's very reactive.
Yeah.
It's like how you react defines it as a decorative moment, you know? So how did you all get started in the industry? Molly, let's start with you.
Sure.
Yeah.
I went to school for hospitality and I got an internship.
Where did you go to school?
UNH in New Hampshire.
Nice. Okay.
And it was,
you just spoke there recently.
I did,
Yeah,
yes. I
okay.
spoke at in a class they have in their sophomore year. Students take this class to kind of see what all of the options are in hospitality, and they learn about each different profession. So I came in and spoke about event planning, and my senior year there, I came home from spring break and thought everyone has an internship except for me. And I got an internship with a company called the Wedding Bell, and started wedding planning and stayed with them after college. So moved down to Boston a few years ago.
That's a little different from what you're doing now because now
Yes, yeah.
wedding. So you started off with wedding planning? Okay.
I started in weddings and moved into hotels and did mostly social events in 2 different hotels in the city. And then now I'm working for a private company called FMA Events, and we do just corporate. So we're a destination management company. So all of our guests are from out of town and they come in to the city, and we're kind of local experts. So we give unique experiences that guests couldn't find on their own. So we do a lot of tours, a lot of gala dinners at unique venues like the MFA and others. And then we handle basically anything outside of the actual meeting content. My clients are all meeting planners, and then anything that's kind of
That is so fascinating.
extra to
they
that.
Would, yeah.
They call us and we can kind of provide a special, unique experience that isn't something that they could.
And I
really
love your
do on
events.
their
They
own.
are. I love partnering with you guys on events because
Thank
they're
you.
always so special and so unique. And we just did something at the one of the hotels in the city,
Mm-hmm.
Fairmont. And it was so cool how you created this like Cheers atmosphere.
That
and
came
like
out very well.
It
It
was
was-
so cool.
Yeah, it was Watering Holes of Boston, and it was not something you would usually think would go well in the Fairmont Ballroom. It was bistro lighting and checkered tablecloths and
The bistro
different-
lighting looks so
It was
cool.
beautiful.
It was, yeah.
And the whole there was one whole room that was done in kind of North End Italian style, but had the Cheers bar, and it really came out beautifully. And it's nice to see that a room like that can be
Yeah.
totally transformed
Yeah.
into something so different
So
than
different.
what a gorgeous Fairmont Ballroom
Yeah.
usually is.
And
so.
Art of the Event provided a lot of those like I guess props.
Yeah, they did a
It's
huge,
so
like
cool.
the gates of the public garden. So for guests to walk through when they entered, and it was really, it came out really nicely. So.
And if anyone's wondering how do you make water, or if you're making a floral arrangement and you need the water to look like beer, you just add food coloring.
We did Cheers mugs and with hydrangea in them, and Jimmy made the water look like beer.
Very
So
nice.
Very
Cool.
cute.
I
Client
never
was thrilled.
walked into the Cheers bar. I actually finally had a meal there for the first time in all of my life. I grew up in Boston, and the food was actually really good.
I haven't
food is-
been. I get to do a lot of things that are kind of touristy in this job. You know, we send people on
that's
duck
right.
tours,
I
so I go on a
imagine.
duck
I
tour.
imagine.
But it's stuff that you don't do as a local to the city, so that's been really cool to kind of get to do some of those things that you wouldn't really normally do as someone who lives in Boston. But yeah, I've never been to Cheers.
So Chance, how did you get started?
Well, I started with CXRA right out of college.
Where did you go to school?
I went to the American Musical and Dramatic Academy in New York,
Okay.
studying theater, and
You have a very strong presence. I
Thank
feel like you
you.
have a lot of charisma. So,
well, thank
yeah.
you.
Life's the stage.
Exactly. All the world's a stage. And I was originally working in the New York theater scene, and a person that I was doing a show with was a butler with Restaurant Associates, and just let everyone know that they were hiring for their spring hire. So I came in and interviewed and got a position within the company as
Oh my
just an
God.
entry-level front-of-house server, and very quickly found that I was actually really enjoying hospitality. I worked as a barista in a cafe in my hometown, like when I was growing up.
Where
so
are
I
you
had
from?
I'm from Putnam, Connecticut, just
wow.
just south
Okay.
of Worcester. So I'd had some service industry experience, but certainly nothing that I'd grown up saying this is what I want to do when I'm an adult.
You're really good at it. You're
Thank
very
you.
good with people.
I, you know, that to me, that I think is the most important aspect of service is how it affects the people that you're doing the event for, and that was really just where I came from, and after a couple of years with Restaurant Associates, I actually left theater and said, you know what, this is what I want to pursue now. This
Do
is
you
what I
miss
wanna
it
do.
at all?
Sometimes yes, other times no. There are days when I do miss the hustle and bustle of being a working actor in New York. And then there are other days where I remember that my bank account balance was zero during that time in my life. And now it's at least a little bit north of zero, not much, but it definitely is a different experience, a different world. But being in an event, especially in a capacity where you're running the event, it's very similar to putting on a show.
It is. It is.
absolutely is.
I've always
Yeah.
likened catering
Yeah.
to performance art, to theater.
It really is, and that was what made the transition so easy for me. When I did decide, you know what, I know that this is what I grew up as a kid saying, this is what I want to do, this is what I want to be. I had found something that gave me that same sense of creativity and sense of building something from the ground up, the same way that I would do with a character or do with a show, but in a special event setting. So that really was where I was able to take my passion and put my talents more towards that venue.
I love, yeah.
And then after that, I worked with, I've been with CXRA now for just over 7 years.
Where's your
and
home base? Are you still in New York?
I'm
or-
in Boston.
You're
now.
in
so,
Boston.
So
okay.
after a year with Restaurant Associates as a butler, I was promoted to a captain position running events. And
You know, I used to work for a restaurant.
yes, you did. Jimmy was a butler here
I
in
was
the
a
Boston
butler,
region.
yeah.
I worked as a captain for about 3 years, and after that, they asked me if I would be interested in transferring here to the Boston region to oversee Boston as the regional service director for this region of CXRA, and I said yes, and they put me on a train, and now I'm here. So yeah, that's the story.
So what venues, I know that you guys are at the Museum of Fine Arts.
Yes.
What other venues?
So we are at the Museum of Fine Arts and the Boston Children's Museum. We
yeah,
also
yeah.
do all of the catering for the Museum of Science.
That's where I worked.
Yes. The Museum of Science, several other business and industry type locations throughout the city of Boston. We do some of the catering for MIT. Lots of different venues. I personally oversee about 15 to 20 different locations.
Oh my God.
As far as service goes for those different venues.
Okay, nice. Maggie, how did you get your start in the industry?
So I actually have a business background. I studied business and I started working in the mutual fund industry. But
Where did you go to school? Where?
St. Anselm, also in New Hampshire.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so, as everybody did in high school and college, I waited tables. And after working a few years in finance during the Great Recession of 2008, I was laid off from my job. So I was kind of at this crossroads, and event planning was something that I'd always enjoyed doing and wanted to look into pursuing as my career. So I went back to school, started working at an event venue as a server, and did some time in the sales office, and that's where I really got to know that event sales is what I wanted. So I also did some volunteer work and internships in event production.
Where did you volunteer intern?
At the Tribeca Film Festival
wow,
and the
that's so
Providence
cool.
Film Festival.
I love the Tribeca Film Festival.
Yeah, it was a great experience, really getting to see that high level, really intense production.
Yeah,
really,
it's a lot of production. I remember
Lot of
I would always
production.
attend as a guest for a couple
Yeah.
of years. Every single April, it was like my thing to do. It was like my mecca to go to the Tribeca Film
Yeah.
Festival. And I would always like hop on a bus by myself, and I'd spend like a few days in New York, and I'd just be by myself and enjoy all these Tribeca talks when all
Yeah.
the actors and directors would talk
Yeah.
and all that stuff. So I really
Yeah,
enjoyed it.
and there's a lot of hard work and hands-on setting up that really goes into the
A lot
glamour
of people.
of
There's
that.
a lot of staff, a
Yeah.
lot of people. It's a lot
Yeah.
of walkie-talkies.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I did that for a few years. Every year I set up and broke down the Tribeca Drive-In, which is at the World Trade Center. It's this open air, drive-in, gigantic screen with about 1,000 chairs that needed to be set up after work hours, then taken right down after the movie, so it looked like nothing ever happened. It was hard work, but it was so fun. But then I ended up in event sales, and that's where I am today.
Oh, nice. And you're with the
Yeah.
Briar Group now.
I'm with the Briar Group,
Awesome.
yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So like, so Molly, tell me about. So you've worked obviously at the MFA. You produced events there, and you've worked with the service team there, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
What's your experience been like?
Everything there's always been very seamless.
You
Sounds
guys,
excellent.
I have to say, yeah, because I want to like definitely touch upon like the style of service of Restaurant Associates, because I feel like you guys are amazing and everything is so. I mean, tell me about your experience. I found it to be very synchronized, but tell me, like,
Yes, everything's
yeah.
always been very seamless, very synchronized, and I've never really had a complaint or an issue. Because my clients are meeting planners, they're very attentive to everything because they've done this before. They are very knowledgeable, so they're very quick to point out any issues. But I've done a few different events, and we've always been great.
Yeah,
No complaints.
yeah.
So
Well, the point of me, the point of my position is we want our guests to be able to experience an event in New York on Wednesday, go to an event in Washington, D.C. on Thursday, and then come here to an event in Boston on Friday and get the exact same level of service.
You guys do a
and have the
lot of
same
events
experience.
too. It's not like you got the production of Restaurant Associates, and
Oh, yeah.
even just in Boston is just like cranking out event after event after event.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So and so you're responsible. So because every time like you get they wear walkie-talkies, they're very well groomed. All the staff is very well groomed. And I love the uniforms. It's like this blue kimono, like a navy kimono. It's like,
Our blue Nehru jacket.
yeah, but Chance, you touched upon something that was like really like in terms of like enhancing a decorative moment. So when you're receiving like amazing service, that like okay, a bride can walk into a room and see beautiful decor, planned magnificently, designed beautifully. But it's like then what, And it's the service that they're getting during dinner that really then enhances it. It makes it special and even more memorable to remember the event afterwards. So it's like
especially for weddings or for guests who don't usually get to go to events like that, to be able to feel that level of service that makes them feel special is really
it
unbelievable.
completes.
Yeah,
it
it really
completes
does.
the whole event.
And presentation, like you mentioned, is really important to me. Because I have very high standards for everything at my events, and because my clients.
I apologize for the wrinkle in my shirt.
We'll talk about it later, Jimmy.
Don't worry, I've got a steamer in the car.
Okay, thank you. Always prepared.
Yeah, because my clients are so experienced in the event world and they do take note of things like that, it's very important to me to work with people who also understand and have that same high standard that I do. So,
Well, kind of what you just said about this is a special event for someone, it's their wedding, or they don't normally get to go to events. One thing that we always like to remind our staff of is you do this every day. Our staff are at an event sometimes 4, 5, 6 days a week, depending if there's someone who works.
I love your
frequently.
team. I love them all.
They need to remember that just because this is
Right.
something that you are doing daily, for our guests, this might be a once in a lifetime experience. If it's their
Yeah.
wedding, hopefully it's the only one that they're having.
fingers crossed.
So we always like to remind them, like, don't forget that we need to make this special
Right, it's
on
still
a
the biggest
day-to-day
day of their
basis.
life.
It
Yeah.
might be something that you've just done 4 seated dinners this week, but this is the only one that these folks are going to attend maybe in their life, maybe this year, whatever it might be. This is something special for them. So we always like to remind our staff of
I
that.
love that.
Yeah.
Oh my God. What about in restaurants? We only have a few minutes before we head over and check out the beautiful table that Molly put together.
Yeah.
But in restaurants, what is sort of like the emphasis on service? I'm sure it's similar, but I think
Yeah.
it's different too.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I have such a high level of expectation of service for our guests from our servers. So there's no shortage of good restaurants in Boston and Cambridge. The difference is going to be the experience that the guest has at your restaurant, and that really is centered on the service. The food presentation, how attentive your server is, what the environment around you is like. Is everything clean? Is everything polished? These are the things that people are looking at now because a good meal is not hard to find, but a good experience
Just like a good
can
meal.
be hard
As
to find.
Flannery O'Connor
Yeah.
said, a good sorry.
Yeah, so I have to remind everybody, these guests that are coming in, especially for our private events, they could be future private event clients. Just because they're not the person I spoke with doesn't mean we can't make a really great impression on them and have them come back and bring us even more business. So at the end, it's good for everybody.
Yeah, and Maggie, you're amazing. Like, we worked together at one of my private clients at one of their homes for an event,
Yeah.
and you were just so on it, and you were so professional, and you galvanized all of the wait staff and the bartenders, and you just made it happen. And
Yeah.
a lot of surprises thrown at us, like during that
Yeah,
event. But it was just,
yeah.
it was a small event, but a lot to it. So
Yeah,
it was,
yeah.
but you handled it with gusto, and you did a great job.
Thank you.
And it was a testament to sort of your service background,
Yeah.
but also your commitment to making sure everything was perfect.
Yeah.
So,
and I like to
yeah.
empower our servers. Our servers have that power to make it perfect. And I actually think that they like having that. They like having the responsibility. It's not a heavy burden, but it's a chance to really make themselves shine.
Absolutely.
So I think we should just start heading over and taking a look at this beautiful table, Molly. I can't wait for you to describe it to us. Yeah, let's walk over. God, Molly, I love all of these rentals that you picked
Thank
out. This
you.
linen is so intricate. It's so textured.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I went to the BR Guest showroom and I could live in there. It was amazing. There are so many options and everything is so beautiful and they're so helpful and they let me kind of play around and I
Who are you working with over
I
there?
worked with Priscilla
Ah,
and she's
I
so
love
sweet.
Priscilla.
And I have a real tendency to start like really big and then look at like, okay, we need to scale down a little bit. And I love this linen because
Yeah, the
having
linen.
worked with brides and now working with corporate clients, their needs are different and what they kind of go for is different.
What- in
Brides
what way?
sometimes
Oh,
like
yeah.
the shiny or the like sparkly, and that's not a corporate thing at all. I get a lot of like, this isn't a wedding, so we have to kind of tone it down. And I loved that this linen had texture,
Yeah.
and that's what kind of gave it that extra detail.
What was your
rather than
inspiration
just-
behind this whole tablescape?
it was a really rainy day, and I was just like, I want a spring, like floral, warm thing that's gonna. I'm sick of this weather, and I want it to be beautiful. We do a lot of spouse programs, so when people come into the city for a meeting and their spouses join them, we'll plan activities for them to do. During that meeting time. So we'll do a lot of Beacon Hill Homes tours, and they take a private tour into different apartments and beautiful, beautiful condos in Beacon Hill, and then afterwards we'll take them to Hampshire House and do a nice lunch for them, and I thought this would be a beautiful kind of tablescape for something like that.
Oh yeah, that would fit right
So
in.
walk us step by step. So we have our silverware, we have our glassware.
Sure. So I loved these pink kind of pastel glasses. I love the shape that they were a little bit different, and that's kind of what inspired the rest of the look. So I know florals for spring is not groundbreaking, as Miranda Barisi would say, but I just really loved the plates as well. And I wanted to kind of mix it up a little bit. There is this kind of center plate that we have here is a different pattern, and they do have that in the same floral, but I just thought it was nice to kind of mix it up a little bit. And then the napkins are very, very subtle, but there is a slight kind of damask, almost floral
yeah, there
print on
is.
them
Yeah.
also. So just, something.
And I like how you wrapped it like underneath the plate, like it's sort of.
My favorite thing
Yeah.
to do, and I don't think that it's super caterer friendly because there's a lot going on, and there's a lot of things for servers to now remove or have to kind of play around with. So it's not the most functional design, but works beautifully for today. And I love to kind of wrap the napkin, especially if you have some kind of intricate linen, or if you were going to do like a mirror table or something where you want that to be a little bit more of a focus. It kind of just keeps it tight and it doesn't overwhelm the rest of the setting itself.
Awesome. And the setting, and Chance and Maggie, feel free to chime in. It's very much for presentation. Like,
Yes.
Yeah.
this wouldn't be. How would this be in a service situation?
Well, we'd probably
Have-
need to move our coffee saucer off to the side or serve it once we get past dessert, and we'd serve our coffee. And then I could see the setting for when the guests arrive just being the nice charger plate with the napkin on top of it, and then servers coming out to actually serve your salad before, or rather once we get to that point in the service.
And sometimes they serve it, and sometimes it's preset.
Exactly. So,
Yeah.
or exactly, you could do a preset salad and just have it set like this.
Nice.
I actually really like this napkin fold.
Thank you.
And I love finding new napkin folds. I recently, last year, took a vacation to Disney World, and every different restaurant that we ate at, I was like, how did they fold this napkin?
Yeah.
How did they fold this napkin? I'm sitting there trying to reconstruct it
Yeah.
during my
Yeah.
meal.
And actually, you're right, Chance, because when you have to pull it out this way, it forces you to admire the napkin. Because you
does.
have to kind
It
of look
does.
at it, and you're like, and then that's when you notice these subtle.
Right, because it's very, very subtle. You could almost
Yeah.
miss it if you weren't really looking at it. So
I love that.
just a nice little focal point. A little
Yeah.
surprise.
And then in terms of glassware, so this would be like the water glass champagne, or
Yes, so there is, in this particular pattern, there wasn't also a separate wine glass. So I think that I would probably use this as like an all-purpose wine.
I love
And then
this.
have just a regular crystal.
can you imagine drinking champagne out of this?
I
I
love
love
it.
or rosé.
I really
Yeah.
love those. They
Sparkling
have some
rosé.
heft to them, which is
Yes.
nice. Like, it's
Well,
not
yeah.
a super
Yeah.
light glass.
And I think it's important because they're kind of that odd shape that if
Yeah.
they didn't, there'd be a lot of
breakage.
people talking with their hands.
Right,
kind
you're
of knocking
right.
over. So they're beautiful, but also functional.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I could totally imagine like a summer party with like sparkling rosé and like maybe some berries mixed in or something. Yeah, just like a really cool specialty
Like a
cocktail.
nice signature drink.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
I love that. Oh my gosh. So, and then Maggie, like, it's similar. If someone's renting plates for a
Yeah.
party at the restaurant, then you would probably have most of the plates in the kitchen to be plated
Yeah.
with the food and then delivered out.
Yeah, so I
Okay.
think this is a beautiful setup, and what I would probably suggest doing, like you said, is maybe preset the salad and maybe use this as a charger. Or, if the client really has a healthy budget and is really aware of what service needs to be, is they can have one set out for presentation, for pictures when everybody arrives. Then our staff comes in and clears it, but there's a second set in the back
Right.
already ready to go.
And we've had to do that before
Yeah.
because sometimes in the process when I'm designing an event, it's months and months beforehand, and I'm not necessarily thinking how is service going to handle this.
Exactly, you have to think of
So
the operations
in a
too.
similar case,
Yeah.
when we did something like this, and the caterer was like, "This is a lot of plates. How do you want to handle this?" We actually just added a second set of plates in so that the whole thing could be pulled,
Yeah.
and then things could be brought out because salads are being plated in the kitchen as guests are sitting down at their table. So to just pull the whole thing and then be able to bring out
Yeah.
on that same.
So I have to ask, because that seems like an extra. It seems like so extra to have like
Yes.
another set of plates. Like, is that necessary to create a decorative moment, like this experience, like how necessary is it? I mean, tell me, because I've never done it before, but it sounds really cool. It sounds cool to have a second set of plates, but it sounds like extra.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it definitely is.
It's
Yeah, it totally is.
Yeah.
And that was more, I think, that we'd already sold it to the client and they loved it and it was beautiful and they were like, this is amazing. And I couldn't then be like, it's not going to work
Yeah.
for service. So we just kind of had to do it to make it work.
Yeah. But I feel like,
think
yeah.
I think a decorative moment can be very simple as well. So it just kind of depends
You're
on
right, you're right,
client
yeah.
needs are always so different, and what somebody could walk in here and be like, this is gorgeous and I love it, and somebody else could walk in and be like, what did you do? So it's really just, it depends on people's tastes and what eventually, when it comes down to it, is going to work best for service so that guests don't know that this is a complication.
Yeah.
You're so right. I actually designed a floral arrangement to complement your beautiful design. So I designed it inside of gold vase, but it's all these blush
It's perfect.
roses and everything like that. But on the
Gorgeous.
center of a table, it could be really cool. So maybe Chance and Maggie can speak to like height, you know, because I think we can all see each
Sure.
other across the
Yeah,
table.
Right.
that's the most important thing. You want to be able to
Absolutely.
see the person across
Is
the
it
table.
still important? Like, are you seeing
yeah.
centerpieces that are blocking? Because I go online, I go on Instagram, and I look at event design, and some people are now designing very, very obstructive
Big.
arrangements. Yeah.
No, I mean, you see it. You see it. It is something that some planners do still want to be cognizant of, and they're very focused on. I do want my guests to be able to see one another across the table. I see a lot of the tall ones will often be glass,
Yeah.
something that you
True.
can still see through.
Yeah.
But it's definitely. I think it's to each their own. Is kind of how it,
You're
how
right.
it plays. It
Yeah.
really depends on what that particular planner wants to do, what the particular client wants to do. It can really depend on your bride or on your corporate client. Do I want to be able to talk to the person across the table from me?
Yeah.
Is it only important that I can have a conversation with the people on either side of me?
Yeah.
And you can always bring in height with like tall crystal candlesticks or
Yes.
tall candlesticks that are sort of, you can still see through, but they have that height dimension,
Yeah.
which is really unique.
And they're
Yeah.
narrower. You don't have to
Yeah.
worry as much about.
Yeah, I've also seen
big
a lot
solid
of
obstruction.
suspended things
True.
happening
Sure.
too, or things that are kind of rigged above so that you still have the drama of a high centerpiece, but it's not blocking viewpoint or chatting
Love
with
that.
anyone.
Jimmy is the
Thank you.
king of the table art.
I know, don't even get me started. I'm
Go to Jimmy for a table art. It's amazing. Yeah.
So we're actually wrapping up now. We just have a few minutes left, but I just want to thank you so much for being on the show today. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
I appreciate you
So
taking the
much
time.
fun.
I appreciate you organizing everything and you guys speaking to service and all of that. And to our guests at home, thank you so much again for tuning into this episode of Jimmy's Decorative Moments. I'd like to thank Glenn and Janice Williams of the Rosendale Arts Alliance, Simone Williamson of Be Our Guest Party Rental, and to all of you at home watching today, I hope you took some inspiration to be able to infuse it into your own life to create decorative moments on your day-to-day experience. Have a great week.